Tonight on Prime Time, Paris confirms it will deliver fighter jets to help Ukraine, marking one of France's most significant steps since the conflict began. As Europe reassesses its security posture, debate intensifies over the scale and direction of future commitments. Beyond French fighter jets, where does Europe's strategy in Ukraine go next? Good evening. France's pledge adds fresh momentum to Ukraine's military planning and sharpens the political conversation inside Europe over readiness, delivery and long-term backing. In a few moments, we'll have a special guest, the Right Honourable Tobias Ellwood, former UK Defence Minister. He'll be joining us live. But first, let's hear the French President's press conference, and then we'll head to our correspondent in Paris for the latest reaction.
Aujourd'hui, nous franchissons une nouvelle étape.
Today, we're entering a new stage. With this agreement, we continue to count on the rapprochement and on the integration of our defence industries in order to continue to support Ukraine, the modernisation of its armed forces on the front line, and which are the first line of defence for Europe and for dissuasion against aggression. And we're doing so in the long term, also declaring that the capacity to regenerate the Ukrainian army is a critical element for the security of all of us. There is the acquisition by Ukraine of up to 100 Rafale jets, our last generation fighter jets, with complete equipment. This is a new generation that is opening after the deliveries of Mirage 2000s decided several months ago, accompanied by the training of pilots. And so we will deploy this acquisition commitment of 100 Rafale fighter jets, along with the training and production programs that accompany it.
Well, let's head to Paris now and get the latest from our correspondent, Ross Cullen.
Well, Guy, the French foreign minister saying on Tuesday that this was a historic deal. The French defence minister, Catherine Vautrin, saying that this would create 7,000 jobs. They are talking about that landmark defence agreement signed here in France on Monday between President Emmanuel Macron and President Volodymyr Zelensky, at the heart of which is that headline policy announcement that France will supply 100 fighter jets to Ukraine. Kiev agreeing to buy the Dassault-made fighter jets over the period of the next 10 years. But the French defence minister saying there are other items that won't have to wait a decade to be delivered, including drones and missiles. This was signed during Volodymyr Zelensky's 9th trip to France since the beginning of the full-scale Russian invasion in 2022. And Moscow has responded, Russia saying on Tuesday that the agreement shows that France is trying to feed the war. This has been what Russia has said regularly, that Western nations backing Ukraine are in fact interfering in the war and prolonging the conflict by their actions. It comes as peace talks between Moscow and Kiev have dried up. There is no immediate resolution to the conflict in sight. Ukrainians are preparing for another hard winter, and Russia is continuing to make gains in eastern Ukraine.
Joining me now is the Right Honourable Tobias Ellwood, member of the Privy Council, former UK Defence Minister and former chair of the Defence Select Committee. Mr Ellwood, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Prime Time. An historic deal then here. How decisive is this step though? What do you think it signals about Europe's current direction when it comes to Ukraine?
Yeah, good evening. These are big questions. Very interesting, the build-up there just before I've come on, of Russia claiming this is interfering. You know, France stepping forward, providing long-term commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty, and that perhaps goes to the heart of the challenge here: is who is right and who is wrong here. What I would say is that the West has been hesitant, and Russia has taken advantage of that. It's now been over 3 years since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and every time there has been another advance in supporting Ukraine, whether it be anti-tank weapons, tanks themselves, F-16s, Storm Shadow missiles. There's been a massive public debate about it, allowing Russia to respond, to react, to regroup and so forth. It's been a long journey to do what's right and stand up to a sovereign country that has been invaded. So I welcome this news by France. It shows a long-term commitment, but ultimately this war is going to drag on because Russia thinks it can still win, and Ukraine is still going to get enough backing from the West, enough to not lose. So we continue to have a war that will go on, and as you implied in your introduction, through another very difficult winter.
Indeed, and the strategic significance is obvious, symbolic significance of this deal. But what about the practical operational difference? Does 100 fighter jets, I mean, it sounds like a lot, but is it really going to make a meaningful practical difference to Ukraine's capability?
You're right, in isolation, perhaps not so much, but don't forget, this will probably be the start of other nations in Europe offering their contribution as well. This is the standard jet that France has. I'm sure we're going to see further F-16s, Eurofighters as well, the Gripen maybe, as well as land capabilities too. Ultimately, there's a big question, even if we get a ceasefire of some form, which Donald Trump is trying to secure, who will provide that security? And that needs to be done mostly by Ukraine itself, and with what equipment. So this is looking in the longer term. These airplanes we speak about won't be delivered for many, many years. So it shows a long-term commitment to say, Ukraine's sovereignty, we're standing with you.
Now, you're someone that's got vast experience of understanding the negotiations behind the scenes in the corridors of power around it, conflict and complex geopolitical situations. When you assess European resolve at the moment, particularly in the sense of maintaining long-term financial backing for Ukraine, how firm is that resolve?
Yeah, you go to the most important question, which actually determines who wins a war, is that ability to sustain warfare for the longest. Whoever can actually do that, replenish their ammunitions, their platforms and so forth. And there's no doubt about it that Russia has moved to a war footing. And as I implied earlier, we've been very hesitant in giving the equipment that Ukraine needs. It's also been compounded. It's been complicated by Donald Trump wanting to somehow court Putin, somehow trust the Kremlin, strike a deal with Russia, when most of Europe knows that actually Putin cannot be trusted from that perspective. So we've been waiting for Trump to go on a learning curve in recognizing that actually what actual President Putin wants is a very different long-term scenario than the rest of Europe. If he doesn't stop in Ukraine, he will continue further. He will want to emulate Stalin in having greater influence in Eastern Europe. And that's not good for the whole of the European economy, no matter where you are.
And what's your analysis of the recent resignations, the corruption investigation inside Ukraine? Is this a sense of just a realistic, normal thing that happens within societies, or has this impacted European resolve in some way?
It's certainly being noticed by European capital, but again, I think in your question you imply an important answer. Warfare is difficult, to retain focus. There's a lot of money coming in from different parts of the world to support Ukraine, and in any war you're going to get an element of corruption taking place. Democracy is set aside for some period as well, so there isn't that oversight, that scrutiny that you'd want to absolutely see. But I hope this doesn't distract from the overarching mission of wanting to stand with Ukraine. But that begs the question as what does actually victory look like? And I've never really heard anybody say what we're all actually fighting for. What is that end game that we're actually looking for? Is it to push Russia completely out of Ukraine? Or is it to get to the place where actually we can strike a deal and Russia takes away 1/5 of the country?
And I assume by your answer, Mr. Elwell, that it's the latter in your view, which is the more pragmatic and realistic option?
It is the more pragmatic and realistic, but it's the wrong one. Because when you give up to the bully, when you cede and make concessions in this way, this is 1938 all over again. This is Munich and what happened with Hitler. The bully then is encouraged to do it all again in a couple of years' time. And that's not good. Longer term, Europe wants a good relationship with Russia, with Eastern Europe and so forth. But if you have a country that deliberately invades another country, crosses sovereign lines, then clearly that's going to be a problem for the whole of Europe.
I suppose then what's needed to make sure that that isn't the option that's taken is for other European countries to follow the recent example of France. I mean, the UK, for example, are you looking for the UK to follow the example of President Macron and start to do more?
Yeah, I mean, I take it from a military perspective. It's not so much the platforms themselves, it's the capabilities. It could very well be that Britain provides training, for example, to the armed forces. There could be cyber contributions as well. It's more likely that we'd provide a maritime and air component too. It's important that the alliance works together to support Ukraine. Only then can we stand up to the might of Russia and hopefully persuade President Putin to say, listen, time to draw a line here. This is not in Russia's interest. It's not in the Russian people's interest to do this. The Russian economy could actually be far better if it has a working relationship with Europe.
And finally, Mr. Owen, in your experience, not just of diplomacy, but also of military strategy, we're obviously approaching winter now. Conditions are becoming very, very difficult for many people. What should Europe's immediate priorities be in order to support Ukraine most effectively during these cold months ahead?
Well, we need to take the war seriously, give the weapon systems that Ukraine needs. That means Storm Shadows, that means Taurus, that means the ATACMS, so that Ukraine can hit those targets at range inside Russia from where Russia is actually attacking Ukraine. Then you push the fight back. Then you start to actually be able to consolidate the ability for Ukraine to gain ground. Until that happens, then Russia is taking advantage of being able to fire from Russia, but not be attacked from Ukraine.
The Right Honourable Tobias Ellwood, we thank you very much indeed for your analysis and for joining us on Prime Time.
Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we'll be taking a look at the inaugural Azerbaijan-US think tank forum that's taking place right here in Baku. Do stay with us. Welcome back, you're watching Prime Time. Baku is staging the inaugural Azerbaijan-US think tank forum today, the first major follow-through to that Washington summit in August, where both sides set out a new strategic partnership. Analysts say this step could recalibrate the security landscape across the South Caucasus, while further cementing Azerbaijan's position as a vital link between Europe and Asia. AnewZ's Nuray Mustafa has the details.
The first Azerbaijan-US think tank forum has officially commenced in Baku, dedicated to ushering bilateral relations into a new phase. The event serves as a key platform for discussions on the region's evolving geopolitical agenda. The forum focused on the outcomes of the Washington summit on 8 August 2025 and their implications for relations between the two nations. The agreement reached at the summit between President Ilham Aliyev and President Donald Trump to elevate ties to a strategic partnership set the central theme for discussions in Baku. Experts noted that this step opens new avenues for security and cooperation in the South Caucasus. The forum also examined shifting global energy routes, the deepening competition among major powers, and Azerbaijan's increasingly pivotal role as a strategic bridge between Europe and Asia.
The United States understands that the Central Asian states have an important requirement to get their products directly to world markets. So the administration is interested in the middle corridor concept that Kazakhstan in particular has been pushing for years. Trump's interest in making peace led to his engagement with Azerbaijan and Armenia. And a very important part of that engagement is the transportation route in the south, which we're now calling the Trump transportation route. So Trump has put all these things together, I think in a very smart way, and developing cooperation with the Central Asian states and with Armenia and Azerbaijan and Turkey.
Project as something that binds to really bring to life the entire middle corridor.
Within the forum, the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process and emerging post-conflict regional order were assessed. Delegates observed that diplomatic engagement has intensified following the Washington summit, and deliberation focused on prospects for a peace treaty, border delimitation, and humanitarian issues. The necessity of practical mechanisms and confidence-building measures to ensure lasting peace were emphasized.
I think the Trump route will play a huge role in making sure that happens. The second thing, so that is a geopolitical, political issue. The second is logistical. There are issues with how do you connect cross-Caspian. So it's still an issue. If you're going to build pipelines from Turkmenistan, how will that work? If you're going to do tanker traffic from Kazakhstan, I don't mean at current scales, I mean at much bigger scales, then how will that work?
Overall attention was drawn to Azerbaijan's growing role in linking energy, transport and digital networks across Eurasia. Key topics included the expansions of the Southern Gas Corridor, renewable energy initiatives, and the development of the Middle Corridor. Experts highlighted that strengthening digital infrastructure and fostering cooperation in artificial intelligence could accelerate sustainable development and economic transformation across the region.
As far as Azerbaijan-US relations is concerned, we hope that we will come to the logical conclusion in signing the strategic partnership agreement, and subsequently we're speaking about a broader perspective for investment, for trade, for new sectors development in Azerbaijan's economy like IT, artificial intelligence, etc.
Not as a cross critique after all, American.
Participants agreed that integration traditional energy partnership with modern technological initiatives would further consolidate Azerbaijan's position as a strategic hub in the region.
Joining me now to discuss this in more detail is the host of Inside Politics, Anastasia Lavrina. Anastasia, good to have you here.
Thank you so much.
The inaugural forum then, how is it being positioned by both Washington and Baku? And what does that signal, do you think, about where the relationship is headed?
Well, it's the first think tank forum uniting the experts from the United States of America and Azerbaijan, and all experts are so much excited about the future. We do have a strategic partnership between Azerbaijan and the United States, and now there is a real possibility for two sides experts to come together to discuss in practice what can be done else and come up with some advices which can be used by the officials in the future. And it's also a good opportunity for Azerbaijan to show the reality on the ground, what's happening in the Karabakh post-conflict development, then there's a perspective for the future of Azerbaijan as a very important interconnector between Asia and Europe. So all experts are so much excited about what's happening in the region and will grab a lot of knowledge to share later in Washington. We have to understand that the balance of power in the South Caucasus shifted dramatically since November 2020. And since the strategic partnership was signed between Azerbaijan and the United States in August this year, when the very important meeting was held in Washington between Armenia and Azerbaijan with the participation of the American leader Donald Trump, it's changed the approach of the United States towards the South Caucasus. Previously, when asked several experts in Washington, what do you see about the strategy of the United States towards our region? They were saying that, all of them were saying that there is no one single approach. United States has its own approach towards the situation in Georgia, in Azerbaijan and Armenia. With Georgia, it's more about human rights, democracy, and the influence of the United States, and Georgia was quite significant, much better than in Armenia and Azerbaijan. In case with Armenia, it's more about Armenian lobby and diaspora, which is also quite powerful and has its own approach to the situation in the region. And with Azerbaijan, we had some problems, especially during the Biden administration. But now United States is trying to position it, South Caucasus, as a region where the cooperation between three states can benefit everyone: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Turkey, United States, and Central Asia. And everybody in Washington now understands that Azerbaijan is taking very important geographical location. Without Azerbaijan, the connection with Central Asian states, it seems impossible, because Central Asia is landlocked. And with a middle corridor, with Zangezur corridor, with a southern gas corridor, Azerbaijan play very, very important, I will say even significant role. So the strategic partnership, the logistics, and also expectations of Azerbaijan were mentioned today at the forum. Like what Azerbaijan expects from the United States is a cooperation in diplomacy, in economy, in the security issues, the fight against terrorism, where Washington and Baku can unite their efforts, and of course the US investments, which is very important for the future development of many spheres: green transition, energy, logistics, and post-conflict recovery and development of Karabakh region.
And Anastasia, just talk us through why this strategic charter has become so pivotal right now. What are the core issues that both sides are trying to shape before it gets agreed?
Well, the timing is critical. There are so many geopolitical changes in the region, and we could see that the Trump administration has totally different approach to the situation between Russia and Ukraine. Biden has more precise position, saying that the United States will support Ukraine till the end in this way. But when Donald Trump came to the White House, he tried to balance, he tried to bring Russia to the table. So in the beginning, there were real attempts to bring the peace and stability between Russia and Ukraine as well. And there is also a totally different approach, as I mentioned before, in towards the situation between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So in Washington, there is a clear understanding that the region is changing. And Azerbaijan is not the same country as it was 5 or 10 years ago. Therefore, they should take into account the position of Azerbaijan, its important stance in the region, and to realize and understand whether the United States want to be a part of these new geopolitical changes and transport logistics development in the region, or it should stay apart. Zangezur corridor, which came to agenda since November 2020, now in Washington is being called as a Trump corridor. So in Washington, there is a clear understanding that there can be active involvement in the future construction, and there's a diplomacy, there's a shift which happened since August 8th in the region. There is a real diplomacy in practice at the moment. I remember a couple of weeks before in this studio, we discussed with you the first cargo transit, which came from Russia to Azerbaijan, Georgia, and then to Armenia. So the peace is now it's taking its active phase, and Washington really want to be a part of it. They want to be part of the middle corridor. They want to be part of all of these changes in the region. So we observe a totally different approach of Trump's administration to what is happening in the region. So I guess all of those geopolitical changes I mentioned before, they played their own role. And we are lucky enough to see that this new Trump's administration is want to be involved not only on the political level, but as an example of this think tank forum, on the level of experts, academicians, probably in the future the experts of in energy fields. Well, I think there's a right time for two sides to work more actively.
And you mentioned that 8th of August meeting in Washington, right. A pivotal moment. I think many people watching around the world could see that something special was developing between the two presidents. There was a clear sense of warmth and positive spirit, and it seemed to me that this was more than just sort of convenient optics, that there was a genuine sense of wanting to work together, common agenda. How has that meeting and the effects, the ripple effects that it created, how has that started to shape actual real policy, real practical developments on the ground?
During the first term of Trump's administration, we had some positive shifts in the bilateral relations between Washington and Baku, and we had some stuck during the Biden's administration. And now what we see, it's a very rapid development of the relations. And Trump's approach has its own, let's say, political, diplomatic, and academic background in this way. What I like really that Trump is mentioning what's happening in Washington on 8th of August in all meetings he held later at the forum held in Egypt on Gaza peace talk, Gaza ceasefire, then on the official meetings with C5+1, which was held just recently in Washington. I guess we'll come to that point as well. So Trump is mentioning his own new approach to the region of the South Caucasus with enthusiasm for the future. He's mentioning the peace, and to be honest, actually he's, Trump is saying that he helped to solve the conflicts in many parts of the world, including, let's say, India and Pakistan, Azerbaijan and Armenia, Russia and Ukraine. But in reality, this is a real example on how Trump's involvement also speed up the process of negotiations between two sides. And again, Armenian diaspora, Armenian lobby in Washington, which always saw the region through the prism of war and try to destabilize the situation, now taking into account that Trump's involvement in the peace process, will say, I will say it slowed down the process of involvement of Armenian diasporas in the United States, which again had a totally different approach to the realities in the region. It also had a positive influence. Therefore, this approach, I guess, maybe we'll talk a bit later about that, but I want to mention it here that one of the experts, by the way, at the panel discussion today say that Washington is considering South Caucasus as its broad strategy together with Central Asia. Having willingness to intensify the partnership between Washington and Central Asian states cannot ignore this part of Azerbaijan can play for the future.
Well, that leads us nicely onto this discussion. You mentioned the C5, now of course the C6.
Yeah.
Quite an achievement for Azerbaijan. Give us your reflections, please, on firstly that achievement in itself, and secondly, how this now can start to shape stronger connectivity with the US.
When we had that meeting in Washington, C5+1, held a couple of weeks ago, I had a very nice talk with many experts in the United States, and all of those were repeating the same sentences they used to repeat for many years. They wish to see this format to be enlarged to C6+1. And now there is a reality on the ground. Azerbaijan has become a full-fledged participant of the consultative meeting of the heads of states of Central Asia. Previously, we had this very intensively developed relations between Azerbaijan and Central Asia within the Organization of Turkic States or the Middle Corridor, cooperation with China, active involvement of the Central Asian state in the post-conflict development in the region in Karabakh and East Zangezur. But now, and in parallel way, we saw how Central Asian states are interested to diversify their diplomacy and their external relations. In parallel way, developing it with Russia, let's say China and the United States. And now Azerbaijan actually was a part of this process, but distantly. But now it's a real actor of the future negotiations and the future projects in between of United States and Central Asia. Especially it comes to the Middle Corridor. Indeed, all countries in the region are interested in diversification. Middle Corridor, it's coincide with Belt and Road policy promoted by China. And despite the fact that China and United States are still huge competitors in many spheres, especially when it comes to the global economy influence, here I guess the interests are coincided. Because with the development of Middle Corridor, everybody will only gain more benefits. It will diversify dependence of Central Asian states from, let's say, Russia and China. At the same time, China will get some benefits because Belt and Road project will be intensified and developed. Azerbaijan, it's on the crossroads, therefore it doesn't matter whether it comes to the green energy transition, cargos transition, transport links developments, or maybe some green transition for the future, which is also on the agenda. Azerbaijan will be in the center of all of these processes. So Azerbaijan, geographically, the location of Azerbaijan is very, very important. Another participant of today's forum mentioned that Azerbaijan is a very small country in comparison to the United States or China, for example. It's just over 10 million people. But due to this, its geographic location, due to its strategically important involvement in all of the regional projects, due to its intention to sustain stability in the region, Azerbaijan attracted the attention of all global powers, including the United States. And it's not more only about the dictation from outside, it's an ability and willingness of the global powers to sit at the table and to have a mutually beneficial cooperation with Azerbaijan and with other regional powers. And I think that this integration between Azerbaijan and the United States and Central Asia will also bring closer three countries in the South Caucasus, Georgia, Armenia and Azerbaijan, in many spheres, because there are some challenges which is needed the mutual approach rather than the one single approach of one country. Let's say water scarcity, for example, or the situation with Metsamor nuclear power station in Armenia, which is quite old and positioned itself as a very dangerous element of the regional stability. So together the countries can be more intensively involved in the economic processes, logistical development, security matters, and of course attracting more Western investments in the region.
And we've spoken about how President Trump sees the individual actors in this region, the different benefits and roles that he believes that they can bring to the table. The C5 is now the C6, that is a reality. We've got this strong relationship between President Trump and President Aliyev. The trip corridor is happening. With all that in mind, what practical differences, benefits do you expect that to create over the next 12, 24, 36 months?
Well, I guess now we have to use this opportunity. You perfectly know yourself, with the change of administration in the United States, it's changed the total approach of the United States towards the regions it has. Let's say now Donald Trump has a completely different approach to the regions in different parts of the world. So I would say we have more or less 3 more years to intensify our relations with the United States. Azerbaijan itself will definitely continue to strengthen its cooperation with the regional actors, with Central Asia, with China, even with Russia and Iran. We have enough economic and transport communications. Relations with Georgia and hopefully with Armenia will be also developed smoothly in the near future. But I guess for the next months, it's a critical time to make sure that the projects, the logistical projects which are on the stage of negotiations, to come in practice. Specifically, it's about Dangizur corridor. If this corridor to be opened in near future and start its operation, it will definitely change completely the reality in the region. It will retransform the transport communications and logistical cooperation between the countries. So if we unite our efforts, if we unify our approach towards the processes taking place in a different parts of the world, in the globe, then we will not be that much affected in the case of any changes in the West. I think that in Armenia there is a clear understanding now how the situation should work for the benefits the population of that countries, and we can see the changes among the approach of the population of that country. Previously, they were so much skeptical about the future of Azerbaijan and Armenia relations, but now, since the first cargo were delivered to Armenia. Since the time, Kazakhstan is planning also to send its own cargo and goods through Azerbaijan to Armenia. And since there is a real possibility to remove the blockade on the border between Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Turkey and Armenia, so there is a reality which should be on the table, and the country should pay more attention to make sure it's to be realized in near future. In near months or the years, there's a real possibility to bring the long-lasting peace in the region with the efforts of Azerbaijani government in cooperation with many other countries in the region. Everybody is talking about peace, and we have to use this opportunity.
Anastasia, we appreciate your analysis as always, and we thank you for pulling yourself away from Inside Politics to come and join us.
Thank you so much. Always pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a short break now. When we're back, Katie Wilson will be breaking down the top business news stories of the day. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Prime Time. Okay, let's take a look at the top business news stories of the day. Katie Wilson is here. Katie, what have you got for us?
Well, Guy, investors are growing nervous ahead of a packed week of retail results and economic data. So we're seeing the effect of this across the spectrum today, but it's better news for the creators of a viral dance that you might remember. I've got all the details and more. Let's get started. Starting off with Bitcoin, which has hit its lowest level in more than 6 months, its investors pull back from risky bets. Traders say crypto is moving in lockstep with jittery stock markets, and the fallout is big. The crypto market has shed over $1 trillion since early October.
Bitcoin's price dropped below $93,000 Monday, falling to its lowest level in more than 6 months. The decline comes amid a broad sell-off in riskier assets. One trading director recently told Reuters that because Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies generally move with the stock market, they haven't become an asset of alternative value to hedge against fear in other sectors. He added, quote, "If there is no enthusiasm toward risk-taking, it seems like that also translates into hesitation with Bitcoin and the like." Risky assets overall have come under pressure in recent days, as expectations of a rate cut from the Federal Reserve in December have shrunk, as a growing number of policymakers signaled an indication to hold off. Markets now price in about a 40% chance of a December rate cut, down from about 90% earlier this month. Since peaking on October 7th, the crypto market capitalization has fallen by more than $1 trillion, or about a quarter of its value.
Global markets hit a rough patch on Tuesday, with tech-heavy Japan and South Korea leading the slide. Investors are growing nervous ahead of Nvidia's earnings and a packed week of economic data, which could shake confidence in the recent tech-driven rally. Let's take a look.
Global stocks were down on Tuesday. Investors sold off ahead of key economic data and due to concerns about a potentially overvalued tech sector. Asian stocks fell to 1-month lows, while European shares had their worst day in a week. Japan and South Korea's tech-driven markets were down. Japan's Nikkei fell 3% and was on track for its largest one-day fall since April, while South Korea's KOPSI didn't fare much better and also dropped more than 3%. Other Asian bourses also struggled early Tuesday. The weakness across Asian stocks followed an extended sell-off on Wall Street overnight. The Pan-European Stock 600 continued that trend and dropped more than 1% in early trade. AI equipment makers like Siemens Energy and ABB lost ground. The global downward trend comes ahead of this week's earnings report at chipmaker Nvidia. Investors will look for signs of weakening in a sector that has driven the stock market's rally over recent months. It also comes with markets preparing for a range of economic data releases. Traders are also wary of a long-delayed US jobs report due on Thursday. Some believe the data might lower hopes for an interest rate cut by the US Federal Reserve next month.
And it's not looking much better for Wall Street. US stocks slid hard on Monday, with Nasdaq slipping below a key trend line for the first time since spring. Investors are on edge ahead of a wave of retail results and a long-delayed jobs report, which could sway interest rate hopes. Well, it's safe to say markets are bracing for a volatile week.
U.S. stocks tumbled on Monday, with the Dow losing more than 1% and the S&P 500 and Nasdaq shedding just under 1%. Losses accelerated in the afternoon as all three main indexes traded below their 50-day moving averages, viewed as a proxy for medium-term trends. Investors eagerly awaited the September jobs report, which is due to be released on Thursday after the long U.S. government shutdown ended last week. The absence of official economic data has dampened expectations the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates in December, says Robert Conzo, CEO and Managing Director of the Wealth Alliance.
The rate of optimism going down went from 97% down to where it is now, 47%, that the Fed is going to cut. So what do you see happen as a result? You saw big drops. NVIDIA drops 11% in the 30 days ended as of Friday. On top of that, you saw small caps drop 7%. And that's not necessarily worsening the world, but it raises questions of, hey, are we in a market where the wire is so tight? Even the hint of outdated data. September jobs report is old. It's 2 months old. How relevant is that? It's not all that relevant. And even with that, you're seeing big pullbacks all around this cut, which we believe has about a 50% chance of happening.
Investors are also braced for this week's third quarter earnings results from AI bellwether NVIDIA, the world's largest company by market value. The chipmaker's shares fell almost 2% on Monday and were among the biggest drags on the Nasdaq and the S&P 500. Among other decliners, Dell Technologies dropped nearly 8.5% after Morgan Stanley downgraded its rating on the AI server maker to underweight from overweight. But shares of Google parent Alphabet hit an intraday record high, settling 3% higher at the close after Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway revealed a $4.3 billion stake in the company.
From Wall Street to Beijing, where China and Germany struck a calmer tone during talks, with top officials agreeing it's time to ease months of trade friction and strengthen commercial ties. Both sides signalled a willingness to tackle disputes over export curbs and industrial overcapacity.
China and Germany have agreed to work towards ending trade tensions and furthering commercial ties. The announcement came while Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng and German Finance Minister Lars Klingbeil met in Beijing Monday. Klingbeil's visit was the first to China by a minister from Chancellor Friedrich Merz's government, which took power in Germany roughly 6 months ago. Ties have grown tense recently for reasons including Chinese export curbs on chips and rare earths. Those moves have caused major disruptions for German firms. Finance Minister Lars Klingbeil.
In my talks today, I received assurances from the Chinese side that German and European concerns about export restrictions on rare earths and critical raw materials are being taken seriously, and that we want to find joint solutions that ensure reliable access and reliable supply chains.
Klingbeil further talked on the topic of Chinese overcapacity in key sectors like steel, solar and electric mobility. He said both countries agreed it should be a shared task to lower such overcapacities and ensure stable competitive conditions. Vice Premier He said Beijing was committed to working with Germany to expand joint cooperation. The two countries are bound by an important commercial relationship despite their differences, and their economic ties have become even more crucial as US tariffs squeeze global markets. Chinese companies are now serious competitors for German firms in many sectors. However, data also showed China bought $95 billion worth of German goods last year, with a large portion being cars, while Germany bought $107 billion of Chinese goods, mostly chips and other electronic components.
Google is bringing big tech to one of Australia's most remote outposts, confirming plans for a new data hub on Christmas Island. The project includes fresh subsea cables and has sparked questions about the island's power supply. For locals long accustomed to big business ventures, Google's arrival marks another bold chapter.
Google says it plans to build a data hub on Australia's tiny Christmas Island, which lies some 220 miles south of Indonesia. The tech giant on Monday confirmed plans for the facility, along with a subsea cable system linking the island to the Maldives and Oman. Google said the hub will be smaller than some of its other data centers and would share its digital infrastructure with local users. Some had questioned whether the remote outpost has enough power to support the new facility without depriving locals. But the island's biggest employer, mining firm Phosphate Resources, now says there's sufficient energy for the data hub and local needs. However, it warns capacity could be strained if the island's detention center or a shuttered resort were to reopen. Australia's infrastructure department is in talks with Google to ensure energy needs don't impact residents or businesses. 2 more Google cables will land near key Australian military bases, and experts say the facility could help deploy AI drones to monitor Chinese submarine activity. This isn't the first time big business has set its eyes on Christmas Island. Past ventures include a planned spaceport that never opened and a casino that closed after 5 years. A detention center for asylum seekers dominated the island for 2 decades before immigration policy changes saw it largely emptied in 2023.
And finally, anyone remember this viral dance that drove parents crazy? Well, its creator Pinkfong just made a splash of its own. The company behind Baby Shark surged on its South Korean market debut, raising over $50 million as investors snapped up shares. Now, Pinkfong is gearing up to expand its family-friendly empire.
It's the song that drove parents around the world crazy. Now the company behind Baby Shark has made a big splash on South Korea's stock market. Shares in Pinkfong jumped over 60% on their market debut Tuesday, before falling back to end the day around 9% up on the listing price. Pinkfong raised almost $52 million in the offering, pricing at the top of its range. Analysts say the strong debut follows a wave of successful listings on South Korea's Kosdaq market, which focuses on smaller firms. The company was founded in 2010 and now plans to expand beyond kids' content into family entertainment. It already produces and distributes content including movies, music, and mobile apps. After Baby Shark became YouTube's most viewed video, Pinkfong kept the momentum going with a 3D sing-along series that climbed to the top of Netflix's chart for kids programs. Now Pinkfong hopes the IPO cash will help it roll out new characters, premium animations, and pop-up stores worldwide.
Well, there we have it. There's a lot to look out for this week, including results from Nvidia, a long-delayed US jobs report, and of course how that big tech venture from Google is going to fare on Christmas Island. Back to you, Guy. Do you remember this?
I do. I am one of those parents, Katie, that was traumatised by Baby Shark, and just the merest mention of the song, and it's now lodged in my brain. So thank you very much indeed for that. Okay, after the break, we'll be taking a closer look at Washington's preparations for the Saudi Crown Prince's visit, with defence talks, a possible security pact, and regional diplomacy all on the agenda. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Prime Time. Washington is gearing up for a major visit by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, with substantial defence and investment packages on the table. His talks with President Trump will centre on a potential US-Saudi security pact, the F-35 discussions, and the wider push toward regional normalisation with Israel. It comes as the US advances a UN-led plan for a stabilisation force and a new governing structure in Gaza. AnewZ's Ubay Sharbanda has the latest.
Up for what is expected to be a massive state visit by the Crown Prince of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. The Crown Prince will meet with President Trump, and also he will oversee a U.S.-Saudi investment summit to be held at the Kennedy Center. Billions of dollars worth of deals between the two countries is expected to be signed. On Monday, President Trump said that he will approve a sale of the advanced F-35 stealth fighter jet to the kingdom. Saudi Arabia will be the first Arab nation in the Middle East to operate the aircraft. Israel is the only other nation in the region that has the F-35, which makes the sale to Saudi Arabia a big deal, given U.S. commitments to Israel that any sale of weapons in the Middle East should not impact Israel's qualitative military edge over its neighbors. On the agenda for Trump's talk with the Crown Prince will be normalization with Israel and a potential U.S.-Saudi security agreement that would commit the United States to Saudi Arabia's defense. Officials here in Washington expect that Israel will seek certain security guarantees from the American side to ensure that any F-35 sold to Saudi Arabia will not be stationed in air bases within range of Israel. The U.S. already has tens of billions of dollars worth of military deals with Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries. President Trump has said that such defense deals are mutually beneficial for the U.S. and its Arab partners. President Trump will be pressing Crown Prince bin Salman on normalizing ties with Israel and expanding Trump's landmark Abraham Accords agreement. But the Saudis are expected to push back, saying that they want guarantees from Israel in establishing a two-state solution with the Palestinians. Gaza looms large over any potential diplomatic breakthrough between Saudi Arabia and Israel. The United Nations Security Council on Monday approved a U.S.-backed resolution to establish an international stabilization force that will operate on the ground in Gaza for at least 2 years. The resolution will also establish a board of peace, which will govern Gaza. President Trump has said that he will chair the board of peace, with the U.S. and other partner countries expected to oversee Gaza and attempt to demilitarize and rebuild the destroyed enclave. This has been your update from Washington, D.C. I'm Ube Shabander, AnewZ.
Joining me now in the studio to discuss this further is AnewZ's Andy Mioch. Andy, good to see you. We heard from Ube there, didn't we? This sense of scale, quite a lot of different components to this. But how does this moment, do you think, fit into the broader evolution of US-Saudi strategic ties?
Well, just as you've said, Guy, it's about the scale. Riyadh had requested to buy 48 of the most advanced U.S. fighter jets, the F-35s produced by Lockheed Martin. That would, if it indeed goes through, be a major policy shift that could significantly impact the military balance in the Middle East. As Ubay mentioned, Israel is the only country in the region that has F-35s. And Tel Aviv having F-35s is something called Israel's qualitative military edge that has been long propped up by administrations in Washington from both parties. It was even, the QME was even codified by Congress into law in 2008. Of course, the aircraft aren't the only thing the Saudis are trying to get in Washington. The Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is widely expected to get some security guarantees from the United States akin to those that U.S. is now already providing Qatar. Just a quick word on that. As we recall, U.S. has provided these security guarantees to Doha by way of an executive order signed by Donald Trump in late September following the Israeli strikes on the Qatari capital on Hamas officials during a round of negotiations on the Gaza ceasefire and hostages deal. U.S. then vowed to, quote, regard any armed attack on the territory, sovereignty, or critical infrastructure of Qatar as a threat to the peace and security of the United States. Now, this visit by MBS to Washington is also set to feature a major U.S.-Saudi investment forum set for tomorrow. The event will be attended by CEOs of major U.S. companies, and major deals are expected there, first and foremost in the artificial intelligence sector. Coming back to the start of your question and the ties of these two countries, they are nearly a century old, and they mainly focus on oil and the defense sector, meaning Saudis are selling oil to the Americans and Americans are selling the weapons to the Saudis. The relationship has gone on over the years pretty well, but it frayed in 2018 after the assassination of Saudi journalist and Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. That was an incident that caused major outrage across the globe. MBS denied ordering the killing, but did take responsibility as the kingdom's de facto ruler. Those ties picked up again after Russia launched its full-scale invasion on Ukraine in February 2022 and drove the fuel prices up. More recently, we've seen Donald Trump make his first major international trip to the Gulf, securing a $600 billion investment pledge from the Saudis.
And as you mentioned, Israel expressing some concerns, particularly over the F-35 sale, that part of this. How significant is that tension, Andy, and how is it being managed?
Well, we've heard different things regarding the Israeli views on the F-35 sale to Saudi Arabia. Axios, for example, reported that one Israeli official had said that Israel does not oppose Saudi Arabia getting F-35s, but has asked the Trump administration to condition the sale on the kingdom normalizing ties with Israel. This is, of course, seen by many as a very distant prospect, as Riyadh is in turn conditioning that on Israel agreeing to a two-state solution and a way towards Palestinian statehood, which the Israeli government does not want to do. Most recently, we've heard it on Sunday. On the other hand, the Israeli military had sent a letter to its Israeli lawmakers saying that they're objecting to the potential sale, saying that Israel's air superiority might be eroded in the region and damaged by the deal. Israeli media are reporting that Tel Aviv is anxious to preserve that qualitative military edge, that US coined term, and has in the past worked to prevent the sale of F-35s to Turkey and to the United Arab Emirates. Now, when it comes to the deal itself, we've seen a similar outline of a deal before, and it happened back in Trump's first term. In his final days in office, Trump greenlit the sale of 50 F-35s to the United Arab Emirates. Now, if you can recall, Israel agreed to that deal subject to some security guarantees, but the deal itself fell through due to the Biden administration's demand to restrict the use of the jets and out of fears that the technology might end up in Chinese hands. But there is, of course, a significant difference. The UAE struck that deal on fighter jets, and part of that deal was normalizing relations with Israel. Then the Emiratis, along with Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan, joined the Abraham Accords in 2020.
Now, Andy, a security pact between any two nations is a complex and sensitive thing to try and navigate, let alone between the US and Saudi Arabia. Based on the information that we've got available, what is your sense of the likelihood of something approaching a security pact taking place? And if it does, what are the sorts of hurdles that both countries will have to try and overcome?
We've heard many diplomats, many officials in the region, saying that they expect Saudi Arabia to get security guarantees from the United States in a way that Qatar got them. Washington and Riyadh had long had an arrangement of basically oil for security, but Saudi Arabia has sought a defense pact like the one you mentioned, but ratified by Congress. But Washington has made that contingent, of course, on the kingdom normalizing relations with Israel. And as we've mentioned before, Saudi Arabia said it will not normalize relations with Israel unless there is a clear path to Palestinian statehood. However, Saudi Arabia has recently signed a different defense pact with nuclear-armed Pakistan. And that came after the Israeli strikes in Doha. We also mentioned that pact declares any attack on either Saudi Arabia or Pakistan as an attack on both nations.
Now, the proposed stabilization force in Gaza obviously was going to become a talking point, part of these discussions. How has that influenced this diplomatic space, Andy, between Washington, Riyadh and Tel Aviv?
Well, we've all seen the summit in Sharm el-Sheikh that saw the ceasefire agreement being signed, and we've seen all the Arab and Muslim majority countries supporting Trump and his pursuit of peace in the Middle East. When we look at the Security Council resolution passed just recently, maybe the U.S. envoy to the UN summed Washington's stance the best, saying that the resolution charts, quote, a new course in the Middle East for Israelis and Palestinians and all of the people of the region alike. That resolution included references to an independent Palestine, which is a request by Arab and Muslim majority countries for them to back the draft. The text passed with 13 votes for and with 2 abstentions from permanent UN Security Council members China and Moscow. Beijing later clarified its vote, saying that the draft of the resolution was very vague when it comes to the post-war arrangements in Gaza, and that it did not reflect clearly the principles that Palestine should be run by Palestinians, and that there will indeed be 2 countries. Now, one of the interesting things, the text, how it's formulated regarding this Palestinian statehood, the text says that following reforms of the Palestinian Authority led by Mahmoud Abbas and the advancement of Gaza's redevelopment, that, quote, conditions may finally be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood. Of course, when the resolution passed, Trump praised the vote, saying he congratulates the world for endorsing the Board of Peace, which he will be chairing. The Israeli Prime Minister's office stated it believes that Trump's Gaza deal will, quote, lead to further integration of Israel and its neighbors, as well as the expansion of those Abraham Accords from 2020, even though Benjamin Netanyahu said on Sunday that Israel remains opposed to a Palestinian state. Of course, the other actors in this conflict, the Palestinian Authority welcomed the resolution, saying it's ready to work on the implementation of Trump's 20-point Gaza peace plan, and reportedly their endorsement of the draft resolution caused Russia not to exercise their veto power. Hamas, however, reacted quite differently, saying, quote, the resolution imposes an international guardianship mechanism on the Gaza Strip, which our people and their factions reject.
Interesting. Andy, a complex and multifaceted story. Thank you for covering it so thoroughly for us. Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the new joint move by Armenia and the US that could accelerate the newly called Trip Corridor's future. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. The so-called Trump Route project, the proposed corridor linking mainland Azerbaijan with the Nakhchivan exclave, has just moved substantially closer to fruition. This follows the successful launch of a joint working group agreed upon after discussions between the Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and President Donald Trump.
Armenia and the United States have launched a joint working group for the Trump Route project, a US-backed corridor through Armenia that would link mainland Azerbaijan with Nakhchivan, also called the Trip Corridor in Yerevan on Monday. US Deputy Assistant Secretary Alison Hooker said new bilateral working groups led by Senator Coulter are now advancing the agreements reached at a summit in Washington last August. The US delegation said they also discussed expanding cooperation in trade, infrastructure, investment, regional connectivity and security. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan said ties between Armenia and the United States have entered a new phase. According to the Armenian government, Washington believes progress in Armenia-Azerbaijan peace talks and the normalization with Turkey create an opening for the South Caucasus to emerge as a key trade corridor. Under the declaration signed on the 8th of August, Armenia will grant the US exclusive rights for up to 99 years to develop and operate the Trip Corridor under Armenian legislation. Washington is expected to sublease the land to a consortium responsible for construction and management.
Joining me now to discuss this in more detail is Klaus Jürgens, a political analyst with Economy First Limited in Vienna, Austria. Klaus, very nice indeed to see you again on Primetime. How significant is this new working group then in practical terms? And what does it tell us, do you think, about Washington's long-term intentions for the Trip Corridor?
Thanks very much. Pleasure to be on your show. Now, I prepared a little bit, and I wanted to start by saying working groups, of course, always have a certain dilemma. You know, you set an agenda and you expect that the working group delivers, and some working groups deliver and some don't. So this is in politics, in university and in education where I'm and communications. Now, the good news is indeed that those working groups will very soon kick off. Now, I think it is absolutely vital. I would not call it historic yet, but almost. A few hours ago, I watched the assistant and chief advisor to the president of your fine country, Hikmet Hajiev, and he posted that the rail links along the what is now called the Trip Corridor are progressing, and the road links are progressing, and that this is a new chapter in history. It is indeed. So this is the first point I want to make. The second point now, would all of this have been possible without President Donald Trump? I doubt it. Azerbaijan, for many, many, many years, always reiterated its just and rightful claims that peace has to come between the two nations, Armenia and Azerbaijan, and that Azerbaijan did do nothing wrong. Then we have to take into account the very strong and very financially powerful Armenian lobby in Brussels, in Berlin, and in Washington, what have you. And they wanted to basically object to this. They say, no, this can't happen, this can't happen. So could Azerbaijan have achieved it all by herself? I am not sure, with all my respect to this wonderful country. So Donald Trump stepped in and simply said, look, peace has to come to the Southern Caucasus. And how can it be achieved? Let's open the Zangezur corridor and let's call it by whatever name we have to. And let's make sure that there is a trade link, a civil society link, a prosperous Southern Caucasus emerging. And then we talk about China, then we talk about Russia. And I think this was the 8th of August Washington meeting, one of the key results. There will be a peace deal, I hope so, very, very shortly between Armenia and Azerbaijan. But what happens now, what we are seeing now with the trip corridor is absolutely vital. I can't agree more with you, my dear colleague.
Now, one of the things you mentioned there, President Trump is somebody that whether you like him or hate him, he is a leader that manages to get things done, sometimes by unusual or unconventional means. One of the things that emerged from that August declaration was it gave the US exclusive operational rights for up to 99 years. I mean, an unusual arrangement, but what leverage do you think that creates for both sides?
Well, some people would call it a build, operate and transfer system, but of course it's not that easy, my dear friend. Of course it's not that easy. I think it is a wise decision that technical and logistical and financial operational things have to be overseen by the guarantor power of this deal, which is the trip, which is the 8th of August. But there will be no forces, no military, no involvement whatsoever. I think this is the key ingredient of the peace deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Can Azerbaijanis freely travel and trade between that part of the country and the other part of the country, Nakhchivan? Can it be possible that the Southern Caucasus greatly benefits? I only say trade, but trade is not the only thing. Think about civil society. This is a region which was mired in war for so many years. And we have to, at some stage, accept history that, yes, I say it was not Azerbaijan, of course not. And the Armenian side must say that we made mistakes. But the future for our younger generation in particular, our children, has to be based on peace between our two nations, Armenia and Azerbaijan. Then take Georgia and Kyrgyzstan, as it's said in Turkish, and the entire Southern Caucasus into the equation. Now, it is absolutely vital. Would it have happened without Donald Trump? What is his wider interest? Maybe he's just saying 7 or 8 regional conflicts I ticked off and I made it by myself. And why not? Would the Armenian side ever have given in so easily, only being pressurized, rightfully pressurized by Baku? I am not sure. And the international community, unfortunately, as usual, says this is a conflict far away from our shores. We don't really care. And then Donald Trump stepped in. He knows about the Armenian lobby in Washington. He knows how influential it is. And still, he says, let's go ahead. I think this is a very, very positive sign, Guy. Very positive sign.
And let's talk more about the Armenia-US relationship. I mean, it appears to have entered, it's been described as a new phase. From your reading of Yerevan's strategic pivot, if you like, how sustainable do you think this relationship is going to be?
I think it might be very sustainable. As you know, I do a lot of anti-lobbying in the sense of vis-a-vis Azerbaijan and Turkey recently, and I know the arguments of those who say whatever Baku is getting involved in is wrong, whatever Ankara is getting involved is wrong. Now someone has miraculously taking the sales out of at least one of these lobby organizations, and we have to pay credit to where credit is due to Donald Trump. He put not only the Armenians and the Azerbaijani side next to each other, whatever, a table, negotiating table, but actually he mentioned that peace is possible, and the Armenian side took it home. Some in the Armenian diaspora are still worried. Oh, they gave away our lands or what have you. In a few days, I'll be back in Baku, and we talk about the Western Azerbaijan community, not to have any territorial claims on Armenia. No, just a peaceful coexistence and let people return, perhaps. So, as I've said, the Azerbaijanis did do nothing wrong. I think over time, people will see that if two countries have a problem, they need a mediator. And some people would have said Donald Trump is not the best mediator in an Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict. How could he? But look, he realized that making America great again means, first of all, take care of your domestic homework. At the same time, look across borders. And why not establish the United States of America as a peacemaker instead of a warmonger? And maybe this will be Donald Trump's long-lasting legacy. Now, as I've said, is the glass 50 half? Is the glass 50% full? I don't know yet. I'm very optimistic about this. The Sangasur or the Trip Corridor will actually make sure that, first of all, Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan, which is Azerbaijan, of course, the people can freely travel and benefit and trade. At the same time, someone said today, I can't quote Chatham House, there will be a trade corridor between London and Shanghai. Could you imagine the implications for the entire region, including Turkey, if this comes true? And then sometimes trade goes first, politics comes second, civil society, unfortunately, comes third. But if the Southern Caucasus becomes a model for an internal 2.0, perhaps even EU internal market, free travel of goods, people, services, and what have you, and then dealing with the EU and the wider world, I think this is an absolute possibility. Yes, this time I'm very optimistic, and we should not forget, unfortunately, I have to say it, some people criticize it, but I'm very outspoken about this. Without President Donald Trump, it would not have happened so fast.
And Klaus, it's a very interesting point you make. Trade comes first, politics second. If you look at those sort of three distinct elements, trade, infrastructure, and security, where do you think the US mindset is in terms of the most important element?
Well, I don't have my crystal ball, but I would say this comes 99% as a surprise to you. I don't think that security is the key interest of Washington in this regard, because God forbid, and playing devil's advocate, would Azerbaijan invade the United States? Would Armenia invade the United States? Would any of these two countries invade anyone in the entire region? Of course not. What is the risk from a security perspective for the United States? The only security risk I can imagine is if Russia would put on high leverage on Georgia, and what would happen with Iran, with Tehran. So yes, Washington might say there is a kind of middle corridor. Middle corridor has a different connotation for me. It's all about trade and free movement of goods and people. But perhaps Washington, if I still have half a minute, Washington might say this middle corridor, which might translate into peace between all those nations concerned, actually will bring regional stability. So one issue ticked off. I think America is much more interested, and the EU should, for that matter, to have a stable Southern Caucasus where actually people will live in peace, at the same time with heightened prosperity and power, because you know it as well as I do, when you can't feed your family at the, not you of course, but in general terms, at the end of the month when you can't put a square meal onto your table, then you might resent to disliking the government or perhaps even to violence against the government. So economic stability means prosperity. Prosperity means peaceful societies living together. So this with all my modest insight, I disagree a little bit. I think America is not really interested or worried about that new wars would break out between Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, or that particular region of the world. I think they're much more interested in how can we create a peaceful coexistence. Could it be by trade? Could it be by something else? Connectivity, you mentioned the keyword. And how can America benefit from it? Yes, of course, American companies, American investment, American returns. But we have to be honest, the number, the financial, the mathematical number of immediate financial returns for Washington are basically negligible. This will come after the full peace accord has been agreed. So I think, and here you can find me one more time as perhaps being too optimistic. I think Donald Trump has realized that instead of building libraries, or like the French president did, Baku entrée to the Louvre, nice pyramids to a museum, perhaps he wants to be remembered as a guy who actually brought peace to the world. Give this gentleman, a chance. And he says 7 or 8 conflicts already. And if this is what he's really up to, why not? And even if the financial benefits for the United States initially are minimal, perhaps the wider implications for regional and geopolitical stability are much, much, much higher. So the benefit of the doubt. I'm not talking party politics here, don't get me wrong, not at all. But I think Donald Trump might be doing the right thing.
And it's very interesting, your analysis, Klaus, that actually the work going on to develop the Trump route, work going on to develop middle corridor related commercial partnerships, that work, rather than it being something that may jeopardize peace or unsettle things politically, actually to the contrary, it's something that really cements it.
I think so too. I can't agree more. I watched a video by Hikmet Bey, Hajiev, this afternoon before our program, and from the bridge and the road and the rails. And yes, of course. No, I don't think it will jeopardize it. And why do I say this? Even in Armenia, the ordinary, by ordinary I don't mean negative. Ordinary, I'm an ordinary citizen. It's a UK term. Ordinary, average citizen. They have to make ends meet. And they realize an isolated Armenia in a pro-democratized Southern Caucasus doesn't make any sense. The Azerbaijanis have realized, look, we have to at some stage open our doors, our hearts, and build a bridge despite the history, and we have to sit down at the table and negotiate. Now Turkey and Georgia are getting closer, and the only thing that what really worries me is what is Brussels going to do? We have Washington, we have Georgia, we have Armenia, and we have Azerbaijan. What is Brussels going to do? Are they going to meddle or interfere again in all these peace processes? Because perhaps they are not going into the right direction, Georgia as a case in point. Or would they not finally let educated, adult, democratic citizens in all of these countries I mentioned decide their own fate? And if they need help, of course, they should come and help with structural funds, with finance, with whatever. But don't put the finger and say, we do everything right in Brussels and you do everything wrong. And Georgia is a good example. Of course, Georgia does not do everything wrong. No. So diplomacy, multifaceted diplomacy. But I think the Southern Caucasus has a huge opportunity to create not only an internal market 2.0, but actually become a real peace-making example for other regions of the world. I really believe it. I'm not playing to the gallery here on television. I really mean it.
Very, very interesting indeed. Klaus, we always value your analysis. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we'll be taking a look at the top trending social media stories with Guli Garadagli. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Prime Time. Now, Guli Garadagli is here to dive into the world of social media. Guli, what's on the agenda today?
A lot has been happening around the world, from politics to floods to festivals. So let's jump in and take a look. As the tensions have flared again in the West Bank, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he's treating the situation as a serious priority and plans to intervene directly.
Residents in the village of Jabba near Bethlehem say Israeli settlers have torched cars, damaged homes and thrown rocks in overnight attacks.
We were at home when we heard banging. They threw rocks, broke the car window, then burned my uncle's car, my cousin's cars. This is what happened.
Footage from the scene shows burnt vehicles, smashed windows and Molotov damage inside homes.
They broke all the windows of the house. They fired Molotov cocktails inside the house.
Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he will urgently convene cabinet ministers to ensure those behind the latest attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank are brought to justice. He condemned the attacks on social media, calling the perpetrators a small extremist group and instructing law enforcement agencies to act to the fullest extent of the law. Israel's defense minister said the government is preparing a new plan to allocate additional resources to address settler violence. The military said forces have been deployed to Jabba and searches for the suspects are underway. The Palestinian cabinet urged the international community to intervene, accusing Israel of failing to stop attacks they say violate international law. According to the United Nations, settler assaults on Palestinians reached at least 264 incidents in October. That's the highest monthly figure since records began in 2006.
Meanwhile, in Washington, President Trump has made some pretty striking comments about just how far he's willing to go to stop drug trafficking from Mexico. Let's take a look.
Would I launch strikes in Mexico to stop drugs? It's okay with me. Whatever we have to do to stop drugs. Mexico is, look, I looked at Mexico City over the weekend. There's some big problems over there. If we had to, would we do there what we've done to the waterways? You know, there's almost no drugs coming in through our waterways anymore. Isn't it down like 85%?
It is, sir.
We have lost hundreds of thousands of people a year, death. And that's not talking about family destruction, that's talking about death. And much of it comes through Mexico. So let me just put it this way, I am not happy with Mexico.
In Bolivia, heavy rains turned into dangerous floods this week, leaving parts of Samaipata underwater and several people missing. Online videos show how quickly the situation unfolded. And staying in Bolivia, but on a completely different note, Bolivia is having a full cultural moment right now because their famous carnival clown, Pepino the Cucumber, showed up in a Peruvian festival. People are not happy about it.
We demand of the world, and we send this message to UNESCO, the OAS, the UN, and all international organizations, because we can't allow the abuse and the blatant outrage to Bolivian culture anymore. Millions of Bolivians are outraged. We will shout to the world, no to plagiarism.
¡No al plagio! ¡Bolivia se respeta! ¡Bolivia se respeta! ¡Bolivia se respeta! ¡No al plagio! ¡No al plagio! ¡No al
Para poder ir a la embajada.
Now let's bring it closer to home. Baku has opened its doors to one of the world's fastest growing travel markets, and the response has been huge. More than 50 major Chinese travel operators visited the city, exploring Azerbaijan and building new tourism partnerships.
I must say, a unique and a first opportunity for the country to position itself very widely to a very growing market that we've noticed. It's a collaborative initiative between the tourism board, the players, and all the suppliers of the country that are warmly and very openly welcoming Chinese visitors.
This year we already see a 50% increase in numbers compared to the same period over last year. CVS Summit we are having today here in Baku, Azerbaijan, brought 51 large Chinese tour operators to the country to explore not only the city and the destination, but also to meet here with local Azerbaijani travel and tour companies and hospitality partners.
We've been producing this event since 2008 around the world, and we're very excited to be here in Azerbaijan, in amazing Baku, with over 50 buyers from throughout China and Taiwan. As we mentioned before, over 200 million Chinese now have passports. It's the fastest growing and the most valuable source of global tourism. So Azerbaijan is no doubt going to be one of the most important destinations in the future for global Chinese travelers.
We try to plan a lot of tour routes and groups to this country. And the Chinese, they have a lot of desire to explore all the countries, and I think Azerbaijan will be a very good destination for the peoples in China.
And speaking of cultural exchanges, Riyadh is also celebrating a special international connection. Diriyah is buzzing this week. The Souk al-Mafsim festival is celebrating 70 years of Saudi-Japanese relations, and Japan has shown up with dance, music, and a lot of color.
I think they are similar because Japanese and Saudi Arabian are shy, but we can share the Japanese vibes, hearing sound music and enjoy dance. So I'm happy to share the Japanese vibes, but even they are shy.
Bringing together the Japanese culture and the Saudi culture, Saudi heritage with Japanese heritage, it's a great mix, and you can see a lot of similarities, like the writing, the poetry, even the food. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
The interaction of civilizations, their impact on Saudi society, and its openness to these cultures are very positive things. We saw an extremely large number of visitors, which shows that Saudis are interested in other cultures, including the Japanese culture, an ancient culture that goes back thousands of years. We also saw their interest in Saudi civilization, and Heritage Diriyah has a 300-year history. So we too have a historical legacy like the Japanese have a historical legacy.
And from Riyadh, we head over to Tehran. This week, Tehran isn't just hosting a design festival, it's becoming one. The annual Design Week is back, and Tehran is buzzing with color and creativity, from traditional patterns to futuristic concepts. Let's see what it looks like.
In our past generations, truly all of our architecture and all Iranian artists, in my opinion, created work with great magnificence. And generation after generation, being an artist was part of who we were. In fact, the very first time they wanted to communicate with other places, they did it through painting. through painting on pottery, and even through that, they connected with the rest of the world. In my view, our roots are deeply grounded in art, and we can build on that very strongly.
Iranians, in addition to being very interested in modern art, have a special passion for their traditional art, and they always incorporate a signature element of that traditional art into their modern work.
I feel that this is the first time an art event has happened that is for the general public, not just a select group invited to galleries or openings. In my opinion, it's also attractive to people because the city has taken on a different form, a different atmosphere, with color and beauty everywhere. This new event, which is open to everyone so that all can enjoy it, I think has led to a large public turnout and great enthusiasm.
That's all I've got for you today. Don't forget to check our website at AnewZ.tv, and as always, check us out on all of the social media platforms. Back to you, Guy.
Julia, fascinating selection. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, now let's take a look at some other major stories from around the world. The UN Security Council has voted in favour of a US drafted resolution that endorses US President Donald Trump's 20-point plan for Gaza. Included in the plan is the establishment of an international stabilisation force, which the UN says multiple countries have offered to contribute towards. The resolution was backed by 13 countries, including the UK and France, with none voting against the proposal. Russia and China abstained.
Inside the United Nations Security Council chamber, Monday's vote marked one of the most significant diplomatic interventions since the start of the two-year war in Gaza, as the Council formally adopted a US-drafted resolution backing President Donald Trump's plan for the Strip. The move validates the authorization of an international stabilization force, as well as the 20-point framework to secure the ceasefire and shape Gaza's post-war governance. The voting process itself was swift.
I shall put the draft resolution to the vote now. With those in favor of the draft resolution contained in document S/2025/748, please raise their hand.
No country opposed the measure. Russia and China abstained.
The result of the voting is as follows: 14 votes in favor, 0 votes against, 2 abstentions. The draft resolution has been adopted as Resolution 2803, 2025.
Before the vote, the US Ambassador Mike Waltz set a dramatic tone, portraying Gaza as a humanitarian catastrophe and urging member states to back what he called a vital pathway out of conflict.
This resolution, colleagues, is no mere paper promise. It's a lifeline. The resolution endorses a hard-won ceasefire.
Washington argues the plan provides the first realistic political horizon in years, including reforms within the Palestinian Authority and a transition towards self-determination. But reactions in the chamber highlighted clear geopolitical divides. Algeria stressed that no diplomatic framework can endure without justice for the Palestinian people.
Genuine peace in the Middle East cannot be achieved without justice. Justice for the Palestinian people.
Russia and China criticized the resolution's lack of detail, questioning the composition, mandate and oversight of the proposed Board of Peace and Stabilization Force.
It's blessing a US initiative on the basis of Washington's promises, giving complete control over the Gaza Strip to the Board of Peace and the ISF, the modalities of which we know nothing about so far.
Outside the United Nations, the strongest rejection came from Hamas. In a statement issued shortly after the vote, The group accused the Security Council of imposing an international guardianship mechanism on Gaza and said any attempt to disarm its fighters would make the international force a party to the conflict. Hamas insisted that if foreign troops are ever deployed, they should be stationed only at borders and operate strictly under UN supervision. Meanwhile, President Trump celebrated the resolution on social media, calling it a moment of historic proportion and confirming he will chair the newly created Board of Peace.
Azerbaijan's Hankandi recently played host to the 27th plenary meeting of the Conference of Special Service Bodies of Turkic States. The gathering of intelligence and security chiefs focused on ensuring the security of the international transport lines. Let's take a look.
The 27th plenary meeting of the Conference of Special Service Bodies of Turkic States was held in the city of Kankendi. The main topic of meeting was the role of special service bodies in ensuring the security of international transport routes. The event was attended by spy chiefs of Azerbaijan, Turkey, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, as well as a representative from Hungary as an honorary guest. Declaring the event open, the Chief of the State Security Service, Colonel General Ali Nagiev, noted that the world's transportation and communications lines remain vulnerable to current global security threats, while highlighting the region's strategic importance.
In recent times, confrontations observed in various parts of the world have led to a rise in challenges that seriously threaten international and regional security. In this context, strengthening cooperation between the special services and security agencies is of great importance to ensure the protection of the broad transportation network connecting Europe and Asia that passes through our countries.
Colonel General Ali Nagiev also emphasized the need to further deepen cooperation among the agencies, highlighting the growing importance of joint efforts in today's security environment.
Expanding bilateral and multilateral cooperation between our institutions for information exchange and for combating international terrorism and transnational organized crime is of vital importance.
The meeting concluded with the signing of multilateral agreements and verbal pledges to strengthen cooperation among the participating states.
Well, that brings us to the end of Prime Time. Please do join us tomorrow night for more news and analysis. And from all of us here at AnewZ, thanks for watching.